In this short video I'm going to be reading something from this here book. This book, written by Madame Blavatsky from the Theosophical Society. The book was written, well, published in 1875, and it's a double volume, and this is the second volume, and the first volume covers a great deal of spiritual phenomena. This book covers how Christianity has plagiarized everybody and everything since time memorial. So that's an overview of what this book is about. But the bit I'm going to be reading is something that I noticed when I was taking psilocybin mushrooms in high doses, that when I was out and I sought people, came close to people, I realised that I could discern whether they had a soul or not. And this may sound very, very peculiar to the uninitiated, but if some of you have been deeply initiated into these varieties of entheogens, entheogen means the God within. When you take them, you realise the God within you, and also you can see God within other people, if it is actually there. But what my discernment was, the vast majority of people, God isn't there. Soul isn't there. And what did it feel like? I describe it in my book in the greatest details, and I've made lots of videos about it. But when you encounter these people, you can see that there's nothing behind their eyes. There is no light. There's no spark. There is no soul. They are automaton. They are just earth drones. And me saying this alone, people would ask, oh, who is this guy? You know, why should we believe what he says? It's just his opinion, and so worth nothing. He's on drugs. But let me read you what it says here in these few paragraphs. It's speaking about the soul of man, and those who do the work and realise why we came to earth, to grow soully, to realise that we are shards of God, and we come to experience self-realisation, purifying our bodies and our minds, ready for the ascension into the afterlife. So in this book it speaks about all different sorts of cultures. There's a great deal about the Egyptians, the Hindus, the Muslims, all different sorts of Christians, and the Jews with the Old Testament, New Testament, many different facets of what it is to seek the soul. So here it starts this. When a man leads a naturally pure, virtuous life, there is none whatever except a delay in the world of spirits until he finds himself sufficiently purified to receive it from the spiritual Lord, which is God, the essence of the cosmos, one of the mighty host. Now, this book, being written in 1875, dealing with a great deal of esoteric literature and scripture, isn't written in the most discernible language of our times. And so we have to contemplate, and we have to try to realise what exactly is being said the best we can, you know, with our level of interpretation. So when it says, when a man leads a naturally pure, virtuous life, there is none whatever except a delay in the world of spirits until he finds himself sufficiently purified to receive it from the spiritual Lord, one of the mighty host. Well, I mean, you look at that, one of the mighty host, receiving something from the spiritual Lord. Well, basically, it's the knowing that you are a soul and you are a shard of God consciousness. When you wake up, you realise that, you know that. So that's what that bit is saying there. But if otherwise, if people don't live virtuous lives and educate themselves and, you know, do the prayer and the meditation and engage in all of the virtuous things that human beings can engage themselves with if they untie themselves from the trappings of the material world and the facets of the ego and things like that, their own fear and anxiety and everything like that. If we become scholars or Buddhist or, you know, spiritualist, people like this, then we separate ourselves from all of the trappings, and then we will find the spirit, the God within. So, but if otherwise, the soul as a half animal principle becomes paralyzed and grows unconscious of its subjective half, the Lord, God. And in proportion to the sensuous development of the brain and nerves, sooner or later it finally loses sight of its divine mission on earth. Like the Verdalak or vampire of the Serbian tale, the brain feeds and lives and grows in strength and power at the expense of the spiritual parent. So, if we do not live these virtuous lives and do the things that I've just mentioned, then the soul will begin to diminish. And it's like a muscle. If it's not used, it will atrophy. And so this is what's happened with the masses, people. And this is why, you know, there are sayings like automaton, drones, muggles. Muggles is Harry Potter's term for people who can't recognise spirits because they're not spirited themselves. And I often, you know, use muggles as a derogatory terminology for the sheeple, automaton. And so isn't this wonderful? In 1875, this was said about the people who become too entrapped in the physical world and that their soul is never developed. And, you know, initially the soul may be just a little kernel, ready to start to be watered and nurtured and to grow and to flourish. But if we don't realise that that kernel is there, then we never pay any mind to it, we don't water, we don't nurture, and the soul kernel withers and dies. That's exactly what's happened to mankind. And anybody that's you know, astute enough in spiritual realms can see this at a glance. So, then the already half unconscious soul, now fully intoxicated by the fumes of earthly fire, earthly life, becomes senseless beyond hope of redemption. It is powerless to discern the splendour of its higher spirit, to hear the warning voice of its guardian angel and its God. It aims but at the development and fuller comprehension of natural earthly life, and thus can discover but the mysteries of physical nature. Its grief and fear, hope and joy are all closely blended with its terrestrial existence. It ignores all that cannot be demonstrated by either its organs of action or sensation. Isn't that the thing? It ignores all of those things that cannot be determined by its senses. It's incredible when you look around you and you see that there's the world immersed in the ego, and they're all speaking about Trump and Kamala and in all this different sort of stuff. A whole billion of people pointing the finger and talking like just ridiculous, and not a single one of them ever introspects and asks themselves, is that just not a load of bollocks? It really is just a load of bollocks. It's just a movie. Just watching a movie. Come back in to the projector, the source of the movie. How many do? Very, very few people. Very few. It ignores all that cannot be demonstrated by either its organs of action or sensation. It begins by becoming virtually dead. It dies at last completely. It is annihilated. Such a catastrophe may often happen long years before the final separation of the life principle from the body. So even before, when the body dies, the soul has died. The soul's withered and decayed, and it is no longer remotely capable of becoming an actual thing, of growing and sprouting and blooming and all the rest of it. When death arrives, its iron and clammy clasp finds work with life as usual. But there is no more a soul to liberate. The whole essence of the latter has been already absorbed by the vital system of the physical man. The soul has been absorbed. The physical man has sucked out the life energy of the soul. And it's left it just a dry husk. Grim death frees but a spiritual corpse. So when we die, there's nothing to be freed except a spiritless corpse. Oh my goodness, isn't that? So a spiritual corpse. It's not got no soul, but there is a spirit there. At best, an idiot. Unable either to soar higher or awaken from lethargy, it is soon dissolved in the elements of the terrestrial atmosphere. Now, this thing here, you see, the distinction between the spirit and the soul. Spirit, in my estimation, is consciousness. It's that which gives us the whole experience. But, of course, there is a consciousness which enables us to have a human experience. But for some of us, there's also a soul. And the soul is the bit that realizes that it's a soul, and it's a living entity unto itself, and it pertains to the life force of the actual physical body. And this then becomes separated with the body upon death, or it dies beforehand. But spirit is the essence which knows everything. Spirit is God. And so you see, the spirit and the soul are very often confused, and depending on who you read and what you read. If you read psychology, if you read philosophy, if you read spirituality, if you read religion, then there are always overlaps of the soul and the spirit. And in the Bible, there's a very apparent distinction between the soul and the spirit. And it states that the soul is the living life force in the body, and the spirit is the essence of consciousness, and everything comes out of consciousness. The whole cosmos is created out of consciousness. So the whole essence of the latter has been already absorbed by the vital system of the physical man. Grim death frees but a spiritual corpse. At best, an idiot, unable either to soar higher or awaken from lethargy. it is soon dissolved in the elements of the terrestrial atmosphere. Seers, righteous men, who have attained to the highest science of the inner man and the knowledge of truth, have, like Marcus Antonius, received instructions from the gods, in sleep and otherwise. Helped by the pure spirits, those that dwell in regions of eternal bliss, they have watched the process and warned mankind repeatedly. Skepticism may sneer. Faith, however, based on knowledge and spiritual science, believes and affirms. Our present cycle is preeminently one of such soul deaths. We move closely with soulless men and women at every step in life. Neither can we wonder, in the present state of things, at the gigantic failure of Hegel's and Schelling's last efforts at some metaphysical construction of a system, when facts, palpable and tangible facts of phenomenal spiritualism, happen daily and hourly, and yet are denied by the majority of civilized nations. Little chance is there for the acceptance of purer abstract metaphysics by the ever-growing crowd of materialists. So they're discounting on a daily basis the supernatural, the spirit and the essence of God and all these sort of things, and ever-growing crowd of materialists, soulless people. Isn't that something? I mean, this being written, say 150 years ago, it's old enough to be outside of all the poison of modern day, let's say, because in this day there were just horse and carts milling around, people. The combustion engine hadn't even been invented, or at least it wasn't in production. And so that's the variety of world people were living in. A much more slower pace where people would read with candlelight or maybe kerosene. So I'm going to read another bit now, which is equally as important. And this bit states what I have been saying for many years, that there is not one soul in the body. I've always said that there are at least two, and I've come to consider that there are many souls that enter and leave on an ongoing basis. So, here it says, it is not necessary for me to say how some of the nations of that people seem to perpetuate certain beliefs of the ancient Greeks. As for instance, the idea that a man has two souls, and many others, for you probably were made familiar with them in your passage through the upper and lower chamber. If I am mistaken in supposing you an initiate, please excuse me. I am aware that the closest friends often conceal that sacred secret from each other, and even husband and wife may live. As I was informed in Daya el Karma, was the fact in one family 3 for 20 years together, and yet neither know anything of the initiation of the other. Sorry, in one family there for 20 years together, and yet neither know anything of the initiation of the other. You undoubtedly have good reason for keeping your own counsel. So when people are initiated into the fact that they have knowledge outside of the regular, you see, in this day, people would be so steeped in Christianity in the Western world, and for people who have knowledge that there's more than one soul going on inside here, completely outside of what is written in the Bible, and blasphemous and all different sorts of stuff. So even family members would keep that information from each other. And, you know, it says throughout this whole book that pearls should not be thrown to swine, and all these secret societies and secret sects of religion and Gnosticism and you know, Hermetics and all different sorts of stuff like this, they often sworn people into their circles with the threat of death should they divulge this to the uninitiated. Because, you know, they would end up being hung, drawn and quartered, witch hunted and all different sorts of crazy shit. But now we can speak more freely, and at the very most we are ridiculed, and that's as far as it goes, because people, they are so detached, severed from their spiritual connection, they have no idea that they are spiritual entities, that this whole thing is spirit, and it's all in the mind of God. And there are souls created in the physical form which have a sojourn through life to gather information, and as a test, I suppose, as a test to see if they can discover who and what they are really before this life excursion is over, and then the soul goes back to join its maker. That's the thought for today, people. If you have anything to say about that, then feel free.